Welcome to the Mischief Maker broadcast, where chaos, creativity, and common sense collide. Your host, Joel Freeman, was kicked out of high school in Alberta, Canada. He left home at 17 and hitchhiked around North America as a long-haired hippie and dope-smoking fool. He made a 180-degree change, becoming one of the first chaplains in the history of the NBA. As a professional speaker, Joel has traveled to well over 55 countries. His many books have been published in 28 foreign translations. Pieces from his Black History collection have been seen by millions at the United Nations and many other venues. And now, the Chief Mischief Maker himself, Dr. Joel A. Freeman.
Hey, Baby Joel here. Guess what? The older version of myself is writing a book on reverse psychology. Please don't buy it.
Well, there we have it. Please don't buy it. That's it's good counsel from Baby Joel from all these years past. Tonight, we have a show of shows with a gentleman by the name of Dr. Dennis Rebelo. Now, about a year ago, this is the first time in the history of the Mischief Maker Show where we're bringing someone on for the second time, and he's coming out with a book on something that I think you're going to find fascinating called Orienting Intelligence. Now, you may remember the book Story Like You Mean It, and we're going to touch on that a little bit, but we're going to jump right in momentarily with that about orienting intelligence. Now, Dr. Dennis Rebelo, he's just one of the sharpest guys I know, and he says talent was never the problem. The gap between what people know and what they can govern is in the moment won't repeat. That's teachable in boardrooms, in classrooms, and at kitchen tables. He's a professor, a speaker, and we're going to kind of mine the depths of what it means to be a scholar practitioner. And he has 2 decades of work span in the health systems. He's worked in biotech, manufacturing, the justice system, K through 12, executive leadership. And he teaches innovation and creativity and managing change MBA program at the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts. He's received a number of awards, and I can't wait for you to see him in just a short little while here. Now take a look above, you'll see the QR code, and that provides you with access to a link tree that gives all kinds of information about the Mischief Maker Show. I mean, if you want to understand what is the definition of being a mischief maker, how can you be a mischief maker in your part of the world? Well, it gives you some hints on what we're all about. And I only interview mischief makers, so you're going to kind of get some hints, even if you don't go to the QR code. Also, one of the cool things that for those of you who are live and you know who you are, you have the opportunity to ask questions. And as long as they're germane to our topic, we'll bring it on. Remember, this is a politics-free zone. This is an opportunity for you to jump in and learn from some of the best. And we got one of the best here in Dennis Rebelo. You may know also, if you've watched the show before in different parts of the world, that I write music. And we have a song tonight that I wrote. It's called When You Know, You Know. And I think you'll be intrigued by the lyrics, and it may raise more questions than it answers, but it's when you know, you know. Mel, let's hit it.
The hummingbird flaps its wings, 50 beats a second, a marvel of creation, precision that can't be reckoned. The butterfly's migration, spanning across the seas, guided by an unseen hand, carried by the breeze. The coral reef's kaleidoscope, a vibrant living art. The ecosystems intertwine, playing every part. When you know, you know. emergent design in all its majesty. The northern lights, a dance of colors in flight. Electrons meet the atmosphere, a stunning sight. The honeybee's precision in a hive of symmetry, a pattern so remarkable it speaks of divinity. When you know, there's a hand behind it all, a touch of the divine in every rise and fall. Each year a beautiful design, from the stars to the sea, points to the Creator in perfect harmony. To the heavens, see the stars align, the dance of constellations, each one perfect time. The spiral of a galaxy, the vast Milky Way, whispers of a grand design, lighting up the night and day. Harmony. The DNA within us, a code of life so grand, 3 billion letters long, written by the master's hand. From the smallest atom spin to the elephant's grace, every intricate detail, a testament to faith. When you know, there's a hand behind it all, a touch of the divine in every rise and fall. Each year a beautiful design, from the stars to the sea, points to the Creator in perfect harmony.
Well, there we have it. When you know, you know. I'm coming out with an album. Most of my songs, a lot of songs, are in the blues genre and format. I just love blues. I'm a sucker for a busker. I guess they call it a busker. You know, you're at a city center and there's someone playing music, and I'm just mesmerized. My wife will be off in Florence, Italy, off looking at the bell tower, whatever it is, and I say, I'll be right here. You know, come back 4 hours later, and I'll be right here watching the psychology of the crowd, and who stops and why and all the rest. It's just one of the joys of my life. We have Dennis Rebelo, and by the way, my album's coming out soon, and it's called, of all things, Mischief Maker. About 16 songs, and I'll let you know about it and how you can order it when it gets out. And but we're going to bring on our guest. His name is Dennis, Dr. Dennis Rebelo. Is it Rebelo or Rebelo?
Rebelo. Yeah,
Rebelo.
I mean, if you say it like a Portuguese speaker, you would say it probably like the latter version.
Okay.
But it's great to see you, Joel, and from the Berkshires of Massachusetts.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's great. It's a little dark out here. I'd show you the mountain view. It looks nice out here today.
Oh, that's
Finally,
you sent me a
because of the
picture
rain.
recently, and I said, "Wow, it's just like when you know, you know, you know."
When you
Right?
know, when you know, you know. When you know, you know. Yeah, yeah. What a
Oh.
beautiful song. Yeah.
Well, Dennis, you've worked with health practitioners. You've worked with biotech companies, U.S. Navy, NFL players, retired players, and alumni, educators, executives all around the world. I just was wondering if you could start off tonight. You could just share with us, looking back over your career, what experiences have shaped the way you think about leadership and human behavior, and how that has informed your way of thinking.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. And I think you just exemplified how unbelievably diverse these populations of human beings seem when you announce them that way, right? Like NFL players, including an active one, by the way, but a lot of retired ones or ones that are in this sort of nonprofit season of their life when they're working with foundations. And then, folks who are in high stakes leadership positions, um, and, in technology companies and health systems. And what for me, what has always been attractive is the failure of conversion of what someone knows, right? In the live relational moment. And I didn't know that that's what it was. I just saw people who were capable not being capable, and I watched them get better at it. I created structures through a lot of my, I'll call it academic work, practitioner and academic. I wasn't born in the academy. I was born, as I say, in the real world, where I earned my Ph.D., my past having doubts, but my real Ph.D. is from a higher education accredited
Some people call it
organization.
piled higher and deeper.
Well, that's not my deal, man. I call it, it's like the power of the lived experience,
Yeah,
and
that's
man,
great.
it's so funny. That is true in many cases, by the way. And but I watched people who are really capable in the storytelling space, not be able to articulate an identity claim, right? And if you come in and you pitch too hard, you're no good. But if you tell too much and reveal a lot of your personal interests, or they're uncontextualized, so I created a system called the Peak Storytelling Method and Map, and that was in the book Story Like You Mean It. We talked about that last year, and it continues to be a really moving experience to witness people go through that book, whether I take them through a class, a public speaking class, or life transition class, or if they're using it as part of another curriculum, or one of the practitioners who we've certified with the method. But I still, just the same, Joel, I've watched people fail. And again, that's really what shaped me. I've
High
watched it.
functioning people.
High functioning,
Yeah.
motivated, kind, supported by good training budgets. I mean, in the book, it's a little bit of a preview, but in the book that's coming out in January 2027 called Orienting Intelligence, really, I start the book by, it's a little bit of a teaser, referencing a 2024 bit of work by a guy named Gertz, Geerrts. And Gertz did 172 empirical study review of leadership development programs, and PD, professional development, for leaders. And those leaders, when interviewed as a respondent, shared that only 5% of any of what they learned in these formal programs made it to what we call real life. And so, again, this is an area of failure. So it's not that we don't want people to be supported, or it's not that we have bad trainers. It's that we're training from the wrong perspective. We're training and creating learning programs that are really, we have an architectural issue. And let me explain that. If you could be so kind, right? Give me
Oh, absolutely.
give me that nod,
That's
brother.
already in my brain to ask that question, but go ahead.
Okay, yeah, a little anticipatory on my half. I don't want to be too strong, but if you think about it, we teach leaders and human beings across ages and stages that you collect information from training, and you carry that. It's called the representationalist error in the book. And you carry the information around. So I have a model, a picture, a symbol, things that I learned, and now I'm going to do them onto the world. And what that fails to consider are the people in the world that are with you, right? In that live relational field. So I might have, for instance, a narrative where I share past moment of my life, my current work, en route to future aspirational work, but then somebody interrupts me, or the power dynamic shift in a meeting, and now I don't know how to orient myself. So it's not that I don't have EQ, or maybe even adversity quotient that's strong. It's not that I don't have IQ, it's that I can't orient in the live relational moment. So what we're talking about are micro relational adjustments to be more effective. I shouldn't have to wait for a meeting to end. You hear this phrase, the room wasn't right for me. It's very like,
Yeah, the
and that's
vibe
very,
wasn't right. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, well, what does that even mean? Like, right? So we kind of, another failure point is that we lack a precise technical language to discuss the competencies that we have or that we spot. So it's really difficult to orient ourselves if we don't govern something that we can name, and if we don't examine the experience that wasn't played out. So governing intelligence really is the between aptitude and application. A quick bit, I'll give
Explain
you.
orient.
Yeah.
And then let's get back to the aptitude and intelligence. But
Yeah.
I want us to understand, what does that mean to orient? I have something in my brain about that.
You're doing it right now, right? You're adjusting, right? You're taking information in, and you're sensing, and then you're scanning for what's priority, and then you're adapting, and then you're stabilizing your effort as a communicator in the world. And because we're in many cases, I think almost all cases, unless you're living maybe in a remote area without technology, without responsibilities, you could reduce the amount of entanglement you have. But we're in a hyper entangled world. So my ability to then take a call from my son, a text from my daughter, a direct message from a former classmate in Rochester, New York, right? A friend from the Bible Museum who I met, an NFL athlete, a former tech executive, this is happening, and I'm doing right. Just even talking about it, my body is doing what you were doing. What does orient mean, right? Now we're doing that just to get in the room with the person, but imagine what's happening dynamically in the room. So think, right? So when I say orient, I mean really understand the sensing that I need, that I'm to have a different quality of attending to a relationship. I ought to be wide open in my sensing, right? I need to be understanding, scanning what's priority. I need to then for sure adapt, and then that'll help me stabilize, presumably. But to do that, the 4 functions to orient well, which I reveal in the book in far more
Yeah,
detail.
don't share too much, but we want enough
Well,
to.
yeah, I will give you it's a long book, it's 400 pages. So I would say that, it's about, what do I select for a competency? So again, if I don't know what the language is, I can't select it. I don't know what gear to go in. And then what do I suppress? So if I'm a proactive communicator, Joel, right? We've met them, right? They just come in and they want to talk. Sometimes the talk isn't organized. Sometimes they're not picking up signals in the room. You might want to understand that about yourself, that you're charged with communication, and know how to suppress that, and maybe select receptivity to collect more information, maybe be more exploratory in how you are, and then let that communication come up later. So that's like suppress one that's charged, sequence, select one, modulate my intensity a little bit around that communication and the example that I'm imagining, and then, sequence to another one, another competency. And so think about it as yoga poses or martial arts poses or parts. I know you're a music guy, how music is constructed and composed, right? And then how it's played is different than how it's composed, right? Because the room wants something else to arrive that the musician, who understands well what the room is offering, should offer in return to the room. Does that make sense? And so Yeah. So governing intelligence or
Uh-huh.
orienting intelligence is a meta capacity that calls on, yeah, let's use this, instruments. And
Mm-hmm.
that as the conductor, I can see what I need to be doing and I'm adjusting. And at first it's a little bit of a map because you're really, it's like trying to get around in a new car with a new seating position. But then it starts to feel more comfortable and it takes a long time. It takes probably 8 to 10 months to really get the language right so that you're not saying, what do I want to do? What's that person doing?
Yeah.
It's
Becomes more organic.
yeah, it's more
Yeah.
organic, and you start to see through the word. Oh yeah, I need to differentiate more, or I need to let go of. I'm overly differentiating, which is analysis, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
losing people, so I need to let go, which
Now
is the opposite. Yeah.
let's bring this into, let's say, we have listeners around the world, and what people who are watching live and podcast.
Mhm.
Let's say someone is at a time in their life where they're going to some networking events
Okay.
and they're trying to connect with people,
Yeah.
and it's the first time they're meeting them, and they have their own agenda. I need money from, I need $10 million for or this or that, or I need some connections or something like that, but they don't want to come appear too hungry. How does someone use this information in that type of setting?
Well, I appreciate the prompt because right now, as I told you before we went on air, I just, spoke and graduated along with my friends from MIT. This a whole cohort of folks from the MIT, what's called a Tech Amp program, graduating technologists. They use human skills and technical leadership, but they learn a lot about engineering methodologies. But they play it out in labs. And part of the reason why I bring this up is because that cohort of people are going out into the room for the first time networking at the end during graduation.
Ah,
Then we have the Founders Accelerator, which we start in October at the Berkshire Innovation Center. Those folks are looking for money, like, in the example that you said, but both are types of networking. So we have to think of stakes, right? We have to think, what do I normally show up prepared to do? What are my competencies like? So you have to I call it self-scouting. What am I likely to
self what?
do? Self-scouting. And I steal that
Okay.
from my football friends in the NFL because they're always self-scouting. They're looking at tape. They're looking at game film. They're looking at those recordings and they're studying. So now we use a psychometric to help people, but I can teach, a 13-year-old this language. And if they're attentive, and we have a dialogue and the language is sticky and they get it, and they actually did this yesterday at the Future Innovators program. I introduced a mini slice of this language to them, and they understood when somebody was clinging to details, differentiating, spotting all kinds of like differences in the room versus somebody who was letting go and being more adaptable. So if back to your question, if you're in a networking environment and you're really analytical, that's differentiation. The opposite is to let go. So you would be aware that as you're in conversation with somebody, if you're becoming too technical about your business idea, the enterprise, what you need, that might that might be a good idea to take stock of that through this self-scouting activity and think about when you lost somebody because you were communicating maybe too analytically, and then go to we call it single pole. You're going to one pole, the opposite pole to balance you is that opposite. Literally, it's a psychological opposite. It's being adaptable. So like right now, I'm differentiating quite a bit. I'm on a jazz station predominantly. Jazz likers or lovers tend to be very analytical. So they probably understand what I'm saying quite nicely, is that if they use that as a reference point. But we've met people that are very technical who don't adapt, and they actually aren't able to negotiate the relationship as it's moving really quickly. So, so how, like, usually I give a list of these 8 words and talk about knowing the word or the competency. Like people have a lot of leadership capabilities or interests, but then it's how do I release it? What's the governing membrane that says, oh, okay, Dr. D or Joel, you can do this in the world, and what's allowing me to be informed in making that transition with a good degree of confidence as this really quick micro exchange or micro relational exchange happens, because I'm doing things soloistically now, right? I'm doing AI. I'm using Revive as an app. I'm making Baby Joel songs, but they're Dr. D songs. And now all of a sudden, like, I have to be in a conversation with somebody. If I don't have a way to orient myself to how to better understand where to be at a given moment, I won't become effective in that exchange. And I think from I've had a lot of academic readers of the advanced copy, and they're from religion professors, because I'm right near Williams College, former deans of faculty, folks who are phenomenologists, folks who are I have one CEO who I uh, allowed to read it as an advanced copy, and then I have all my practice where I'm doing this in the most high stakes moments. So the book actually offers cases, field notes. If a practitioner, there's an attending question a practitioner could ask. And I've really set it up because again, you asked me at the beginning of our time together, what are the experiences um, where you kind of rethink what made you get into this kind of work. I'm paraphrasing here, Joel. Is I've watched people in professional lives and in my family not have effective relationships with other family members, and it's because step one was narrative identity. They didn't honor someone's evolving narrative, right? And number two is that now that I had this body of work that I've been working on for so long, it's this ability to orient. And look, I do it in the classroom. I teach other teachers how to be teachers in these MIT programs, like the Tech Amp one at the BIC, the Berkshire Innovation Center. And I use the language, and it cuts through the emotionality, right? People, it sort of de-emotionalizes, right? It creates more of a human science orientation. I'll say to somebody like, "Oh, your adaptability," like once we agree on the language, your adaptability is you're negotiating all kinds of possibilities. Let's say the guy's name is Joe. I'll say, "Joe, well, do you think that's serving you?" And the teacher will say, "No, it's not. Like, I want to be able to say something, but I don't want to offend the person." So, right. So like he's identifying, look, I'm not effective in the exchange, but I'm not telling them, well, just go do this, right? It's not that prescription. It's that person, Joe, in this example, or Rich, or whoever. Where do you feel that you now notice that somatically? Like, where do you feel, and what do you feel? So sometimes the question gets down to what Merleau-Ponty, who's a phenomenologist, would say would be the somatic. So like, and at times, Joel, the noticing, right? Having the noticing happening is knowing that something's not right. But when you have language that you handle one gap, the language gap, now it's the governing gap. I first have to understand where in my body is, like, am I speaking too quickly? Is that what I'm doing? Or before I start speaking too quickly, if I'm Joe, not Joel, um, is that where I could have adjusted myself and been more adaptable or more open, or maybe show more leadership to correct the course of the conversation nicely or creatively? So these words start really helping. Leadership is a very blunt word. It just is influence. So everybody talks about, or it seems to be talking about, what does it mean to be a great leader? And really what they're saying is an effective human, right? That's really like the subtext of it. So anyway, it's a very long answer, but I don't like seeing people fail. I like creating methodologies that effectively buoy them up, or buoy them up, excuse me, and then that they can take and they can use for life. You don't just use it for a little bit. So the methodology is very layered. At language, governance, and examined lived experience are the pathways to understanding. Um, and self-knowledge isn't going to get you there alone. You actually have to go into these more difficult conversations, right, and then leave them, and then be able to study them, like a pro athlete might, or a pro musician
Yes.
might.
We're at our break time at the top of the hour, and so we're going to take a break for our sponsor, the Rosetta Universe. Got a little swag on. I got the hat on,
Right.
and So we'll break for that right now, and then when we come back, I want to talk about the leadership. I want to hear from you about the leadership gap, and get some insights for myself and for those who are watching.
Yeah, love that. Thank you.
Mel?
Jean Champollion was one of my students. He was easily bored, but he became intensely focused with languages like Greek, Coptic, Latin, and Arabic. Helped the Rosetta Stone Traveling Exhibit Project transform an ancient artifact, the Rosetta Stone, into a modern metaphor for problem solving. Educate yourself.
I don't know French, but I think it's pretty close to Sylvestre Dissosé. But anyway, he's saying, educate yourself about the Rosetta universe. This is a little bit about it. I've developed 7 steps to solve pretty much any problem in about 10 categories of problems. And if you go to the QR code, number 1 on the link tree is all about the Rosetta universe. And I think you'll be fascinated. We have Smokey Robinson on our advisory board, Ben Carson, let's see, a host of other people, Kathy Hughes and others on our advisory board. And I think you'll be fascinated by some of the things that we're planning to do. And if you have any advice, call me and let me know what your thoughts are. Also, I've developed this. This is a Jack Johnson belt that I put together. I designed this, and we're making only 700 of these. I almost said 7,000. We're doing 700 of these worldwide, and so if you want one, or you do want one, because they're all hand signed, hand numbered, they're handcrafted, and they weigh about 10 pounds. I've had everyone from, Bernard Hopkins to Sugar Ray Leonard holding it in their hands, saying it's the most beautiful belt they've ever seen. So you want one for, man cave or whatever it is, just to launch all kinds of conversations around Jack Johnson. But every penny that comes from that, go to rosettauniverse.com. Every penny goes to my nonprofit foundation for this particular project, the Rosetta Universe. Now we're going to just jump right back in with Dennis. And Dennis, Dr. Tasha Eurich, she wrote something some years back in the Harvard Business Review about internal and external awareness, and how one can be lopsided, too externally self-aware and or too internally self-aware, and it's just the balance between the two. But she worked, I think, with I think it's somewhere between 4,000 or 5,000 high functioning executives and leaders. And she said that only 10% of them were truly self-aware, and that the higher one gets in an organization, the less self-aware they become. And in your research, you've discovered that only about 5% of leaders really apply what you teach, or what leadership is all about. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I'm citing specifically a meta-analysis or meta-study that was done by Gertz that includes other folks' work, but Gertz is Geerts. And if you just search Dr. Dennis Rebelo on academia, a listener could find the governance problem that I write about. And so there's some good articles there but the 5% that responded in this 172 empirical study review, the 5% that actually not responded, but responded saying they did use the training or some of the learning, didn't say they used it well. So I want to make that differentiator too. They just say that it made it to earth, so to speak, behaviorally, right? So the issue really becomes we're not developing conductors. How does somebody do that, right? And the type of learning that is required means that you have to be in the midst of the practice of understanding how to use think about this. If you're a judoka and you do judo, or you're an equestrian, right? There's a technical language that allows you to be better at a grip right? That allows an instructor to be able to say, hey, when you do this throw, I want you to grab your judoka's gi and pull it like a telephone. There's a way to instruct, right? We don't really talk about the conversion of movement, which is usually voice or lack of voice, right? And then these other flavors, which are how you map, how you adapt, how you differentiate. We don't talk about when someone's doing that, right? We don't talk about that in training. We like self-awareness is just part of sensing. You're just aware, right? The governance is releasing something after your awareness, which allows you to presumably adapt a different, say, posture or behave differently that stabilizes your authority in the room. And it's a very different place to be. It's very, very, very different. So, I mean, it's funny when I think of like some of the case illustrations that I've used. Like I have one that I have so many of these, but there are different beats, I call them, right? Like beat one is your scanning, and beat two is sensing, right? So you're like if you're talking to a client in a client relationship, you know, there's a quality of the client's attention that changes that you're sensing.
Yes.
So right, and it's not the content of what the person's saying; it's the register that it's arriving at that's a little bit different, and it's not an argument, but it's kind of adjacent to it, right? So when I put cases out and just saying I'm sensing that the person's not contentious, but they're a little argumentative, that helps inform how you scan the room to see what am I going to do next, and how do I adjust to stabilize the relationship.
So you're talking on a one-on-one, not a crowd, not a speaking to a crowd. You're talking about talking with them one-on-one, right?
Well, it could be. I mean, I could scan my manuscript and grab one of anything that's like a yellow box and read it to you, and you'd be like, probably that's pretty close to like. So, in to answer your question, by the way, Joel, is one-to-one. It could be one-to-many, but typically it's the one-to-one that we're talking about. But it's not really one-to-one because I'm thinking about it now that you asked me that question. You know, in some of the examples, it's like, say someone's a superintendent and they're having a meeting and they're in a K-12 environment and the community's there, the teachers are there, some families, maybe some students, and somebody asks the question about budget cuts. Well, that's not one-to-one, but you still have to orient yourself to the question. And if you're defensive and you're analytical, defensive isn't really the word I would use. I would say I'm proactively analytical, and I'm proactively differentiating while I'm speaking, but it comes across as a defensive posture because instead of being open, which is a different sequence of competencies, and saying and communicating with a modulation of intensity, geez, Jose, I'm glad you asked that question. We didn't say we're ending funding for the music program. For sure, we're evaluating it. Which is, and the way we evaluate it is by doing X, Y, and Z. And we're looking for your input. That's why we're here today. So that's very different than somebody saying, hey, we're actually looking at this and reporting according to norms in the area. And, you know, there's an intensity and a severity to the tonality because it's not just the competency of differentiation and communication. It's also the charge it comes with and the modulation of my intensity. And so, you know, in this situation, like I'm speaking to you. I mean, I could be speaking to you about, let me give you an example. I'll give you a real example. Can I give you one? Take about 60 seconds. Okay.
Please.
I'll pull one up. The case illustration 2, the silent high performer. I use this one frequently. The illustration is drawn from a composite, by the way, of a lot of folks I work with. So the principal, 40 minutes into a faculty meeting whose agenda includes the rollout of a new student assessment protocol, notices that a veteran teacher, right? I'm sure you maybe even thinking about people you know, Joel, has said nothing. The teacher's 12 years at the school, deeply invested in student outcomes, never silent in a faculty meeting. The persons whose voice the staff tends to organize around, you know the person I'm talking about, when something significant's at stake. So they're sitting, their person is sitting with a quality of contained attention that the principal has learned to read over about 9 years of working together. Nothing about the meeting signals that anything is wrong. The other 18 faculty members, they're all engaged, but the agenda is running on schedule. That's fine. The assessment protocol is received with a mixture of questions. Hey, this is a new student protocol. And there's some enthusiasm and that the principal anticipated, and there's that one person who's not participating. So the ungoverned response, right, say non-OI, is that the governing system responds to the field as it appears rather than as it is. The meeting's going well, the agenda is being met, the silence of one teacher's noted, right, and filed as a data point to follow up on later in a one-to-one chat. The protocol rollout proceeds as planned, implementation begins. 3 weeks in, a significant flaw in how the protocol interacts with the particular student population. It surfaces, surprise, surprise, and a flaw the veteran teacher had identified during the meeting and had not offered because no space had been made for it.
Wow.
Okay? That's the kind of thing we're preventing when we help people understand that a governed response is when selection fires on the baseline deviation of that teacher not participating, right? Not the most salient signal in the room, but the person's worked with her for 9 years. So they see it, and the teacher doesn't go silent, right? The silence isn't assent, it's information. So if I'm the superintendent, I'm going to suppress, hold that agenda completion, not just default to get it done and be on schedule. And I actually want to create a pause. And I might say something like, before we move to implementation details, I want to make sure we've heard from everyone. And I know we have perspectives in this room that are valued and haven't heard yet. What are we missing? Are we missing anything here? And do it with the modulation of intensity that offers availability for this person to participate. So this information takes 3 months to redo. The school's a mess. There are all kinds of issues. So we're not really having lean human systems because we're not being precise enough about the way we look at behavior or the way we actually spend time examining experiences as human beings. And so you can't name what you can't govern, right? And certainly what you don't look at, right? You can't govern what you can't name, excuse me. I'm so excited to talk to you about this stuff. I got a little combobulated. All right.
Well, it's like in relationships, there's a baseline. And when someone deviates from that baseline, you know there's something off. You know, someone's not responding, they're going quiet. And that's where you kind of fish for, anyone here, not pointing directly to them, but anyone here have any thoughts or opinions? We have Dr. Kevin. Go ahead.
So, I was just going to say, let's grab Dr. Kevin's comment. Yeah, please.
Okay. He says, what I'm finding difficult is speaker intentionality, which is not often disclosed, and the assumption that the common language holds common meaning between speaker and listener is congruent, and that's not always true. Boy, that's great. Thank you, Dr. Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Dr.
Want to jump on that?
Yeah, I do. So again, here's where, like, if I don't know language around behavior that I can use, I might just say, well, we've got to investigate like ways to be better at including people who might have like intention, or maybe we should restructure the meeting and make everybody say, here's my intention. And, all these weird things that are just really, not to say that they're ahuman, but they just seem awkward. So again, back to language. If you want to get good at anything, you've got to be able to name things. So if someone's intentionality is not understood, I wonder, because I can't speak to Dr. Kevin real time right now, I wonder what that means first and foremost. And if I don't understand them, I might consider how I orient myself to creating clarity. So I might use exploration with some light communication and be open and be very careful to modulate my intensity, keeping it appropriate so that it doesn't feel like a corporate meeting. Like, it seems like your intention is unclear, Joel. So I'd like you to clarify that, right? That's not what we're talking about. It would be more, and just even being playful with you and Dr. Kevin's question is how you start to triangulate language, governance, and selection, suppression, modulation of intensity. So I might say, I might get better as a speaker. This might be my recommendation to the Dr. Kevin prompt, and say, how am I obfuscating my speech, or how am I muddying it? Like, how am I showing up that actually projects this lack of clarity? And so that's communication, right? For sure, right? And it might be, maybe I need to be more organized in how I map my language to mobilize other people from my language.
Yes.
So again, like we're talking about a language gap, which I know when we had the break, you wanted to talk about a leadership gap. Leadership is so blunt. Think about it as, I just want ice cream, and like, well, what flavor? I just want a color. Well, what colors do you want out of the crayon box? We have to select. We have to suppress. We have to think about this loop if we're going to get better at orienting in those micro relational bits. Culture was a big deal for a long time. People talked about culture, but culture is I would say strategy is macro, culture is residual, and OI is micro relational. So, way to think about it.
To hitchhike off what you're saying is, I know I've worked, led boards and all, teams and things like that over the years. And one of the things that I learned is that if someone was very analytical and maybe would ask the same question 8 different times, or didn't want to be surprised about some new venture, new idea, I would go, if we had that luxury, I would go to this person, maybe if I had that luxury, a week and a half, 2 weeks prior, and say, Tim or Mary Lou, I'm kind of noodling an idea that I'm not, it isn't quite well formed yet. But I was wondering if you could come up with any objections, any problems, any speed bumps in an implementation of an idea like this. So, and then you could almost see them perk up, like, oh, you want me to come up with something negative about this, and or want me to, really do a 360 around it. Then a week and a half, 2 weeks later, when I bring it up in a meeting, and we've already dialogued, they're now on board because I haven't surprised them. Like that, you used the illustration of the superintendent saying something and a teacher or someone going quiet when their baseline is to be very involved. And so I found that preemptive, creative preemptivity has been very helpful in my field.
I think it's a great example, and so that's a really wonderful compensating mechanism for your team member, for you to do, because you're creating space where they can express something. What it doesn't prevent, however, is that person says, Joel, I know we spoke, but since then 3 other things happened, and they load you up, superintendent style, and you're like, I gave this person the benefit of the doubt. I thought they emptied the glass of all the stuff, but they didn't. There's still more.
That's wisdom.
Content. And what happens, and so this is the challenge. And then how does that leader orient? They'll go, listen, we talked. Next time I talk to you beforehand, I really want to be able to. I really want to be. And I see a question coming up, so I'll finish this and get to the question. I like when somebody adds, tell me if this relates to what you're thinking. If you were to do that today, and somebody showed up and they asked you and they derailed you, not you, but you being a leader, do you think it's a high likelihood that leader would say, Ann, Joe, Sally, Franco, we talked a little bit early. Next time, just make sure you park that when I come to you, and then we'll bring it up. And we'll have a sidebar. Just bracket that for now, Johnny. And that's actually doesn't give you any authority as a leader, because it lacks relational effectiveness. So if we want to, so you could do all that work, and then bang, there's the interruption, the power dynamic shift, right? Yeah. Something unanticipated. So I see the question. Would you like to ask the question? Yeah.
Alan Levine says, if I'm listening remotely to a speech from a leader who uses the word ship, for example, what does he mean without context we don't know? I'm not sure I understand. Do you understand this?
I think so. So I think, I'm going to make a guess here. So guesses could always be off. I will say
Thank
that
you, Alan.
yeah, thank you, Alan. So, Alan, if you're referring to somebody who talks about leader and is using the ship part of leader, like leadership, like we need to not just be like that. There's, I don't know, maybe a clever way that this particular person is trying to be a charismatic promoter of being effective. I'd kind of question. Um, I tend to be open and ask more questions and advise people to do the same, and so if but the problem is if you don't have any language around it, and if you don't keep track of yourself and asking the question if you need clarity, you can come across as an alienated follower, like you're part of the organization, but you're asking too many questions. Maybe you're challenging a leader. And to Alan's point, like if there's no context, and it's hard for him to know, it's probably something that the leader themselves needs to be aware of. So I'd
Yes.
consider. And by the way, like a hard reading of some of my work is you don't just go in like OI is the different. Orienting intelligence allows you, once you understand some of these constructs and you start to put them into practice, you actually go in and you can do this because you can go into the leader and say, hey, after the meeting, I could do this in 15 minutes, but probably 5. Can you just be kind enough to explain like the ship part of leader and leadership? I'm a little like unclear, and really want to honor like what you're conveying, and I think I might be missing something. That's a far, like when a student asks me that, or leader, but but it's a little risky because now you have to ask a question to somebody who presumably is hierarchically like positioned in a way that they're above you, right? Some level evaluating you, or so. This again is why the modulation of intensity and the resequencing of the way you orient yourself has to happen or arrive pretty quickly, or else you're considered a little bit contentious. So I know that we're actually ironically missing some context from the question, but I'm trying to do my best to honor Alan's query.
That's not what I meant.
Wait. Okay,
what I
great.
mean, I'm referring to a complexity of language in relationship to dialogues, too often assuming congruence between the leader and the follower. It's not simple.
Okay, now that's super helpful, Alan. I feel like that is just filling all of the void now. So, referring to the complexity of language in a relational dialogue, too often assuming. So, and feel free to append to this conversation that we're almost having real time now, that I love it, is that like if somebody's using really complex language or in the relational dialogue, and it's assuming congruence between the leader and follower, it sounds like it presumes that there's like some degree of mutual reciprocity in honoring other that's not position power. And and to Alan's point, it really isn't that simple, which is tends to be a call for creativity by way of the person who has less position or knowledge power to be able to engage the person who also might not be as receptive to a kind of bonus conversation with someone. So this is why I like these issues, because you can start to map. There's a paper I wrote on the technical requirements of the technical the need for technical precision around technical language for leadership, and how and that's also on academia, and it's a really approachable paper. It's from Narrative Research Group, part of what we do in terms of publishing papers, and I think that might be very helpful, because you also have to spot the competencies. To Kevin's point, is Kevin or Alan? Was the last
That was
one?
Kevin, I think.
Kevin.
No, Alan. I can't remember. Alan Levine.
Yeah, I think it was Alan. So the last question, like it's very helpful. It's actually getting me to think more about how that relational field, like I've got to be able to spot the other person's competencies, right? Because then I can play off of it. If somebody has a lot of rigidity, I'm not that helps inform me on how maybe I have to call on my creativity, even if it's not something that I have a lot of aptitude for. And I might have to start playing with that a little bit at low stakes in other environments to then exhibit it in an exchange. Or I get what I get, right? So we're trying to do
It's true.
is facilitate engagement. Yeah.
Now, you talk about how OI, Orienting Intelligence, is not just another competency, leadership competency, but it governs all leadership competencies. Can you make that distinction for us?
Sure. Like just now, I was wanting to engage in the caller or message maker, not the mischief maker, but the message maker. But I couldn't do it because I don't have full duplex conversation. So my leadership and I'm using OI right now to say I have to let Dennis let go, Dr. D let go. You can't get this guy as a three-way video to get more understanding of the question. So that's me orienting. So meta capacity, think orchestra. You could have an orchestra play off of a score and be a great orchestra, right? The oboe could find its way in the room at the right time. That's equivalent to leadership showing up at the right time. But who calls that well is who? The conductor.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So the conductor, we don't develop a conductor because we don't analyze typically with grave detail. We don't re-inhabit the experience that we had that was successful or unsuccessful. And then in the words of phenomenology, or in specifically Georgian phenomenology, in the spirit of Amadeo Giorgi, we don't go back and start to look at the lived experience, that peak moment, and say, let me go back. What was happening in the room when I lost my authority, or when I felt confused? And what did I see? What did I notice? What was the other person doing? We don't write it up. We don't go back. And you could go back 6, 7, and 8 times, right, to a lived experience, and you'd find something more to it. And that iterative return to it, a bounded lived experience that you've had as a leader, allows you to do that self-scouting really well. And you can see those competencies that maybe you could have accessed better. But if you don't go to the lived experience, right, you and examine it well iteratively, you're not going to be able to understand what is failing to show up in a moment, or that showed up in a moment where you had a degree of success. So I just want to kind of flag that. It's a really important component.
So, what happens many times is like 5 minutes later or an hour later, we come up with the most brilliant response to someone, or a kind of a volleying in conversation. Why is it that our brain abandons us when we need it the most?
Well, I don't think it's abandonment. I think it's lack of understanding that we can practice for these kinds of moments, and again, back
it's part
to
of the architecture, right?
It's part of the architecture issue. Like we do not, like, think about even bad role playing that happens. Like nobody wants to role play. Even people who are supposedly great, they'll say, "Oh, I don't want to role play." Now, in many cases, it's because maybe the trainer is not adequate in facilitating role play. Maybe there's a confidentiality type of thing. They don't want to share kind of something that they're working on. But we really have to set the conditions where the architecture is rethought, so that we actually give people methodologies to better their exchanges. And we do this at the Berkshire Innovation Center all the time through the MIT programs, both the Manufacturing Academy and the Technical Leadership Program as part of the Tech Amp work. And this new book is the cornerstone of what we're doing for the Founders Berkshire Innovation Center's Founders Accelerator Program. So the Founders Accelerator Program, BFA we call it, is starting in October. But think of an entrepreneur who's a founder, tech business, whatever it might be. Usually it's an innovative enterprise, and what the skills that you need and use to work with a funder, to your earlier question, versus to grow a staff, versus to work with vendors, versus to work in an ecosystem that is like a hub, a catalyst for these types of companies. And maybe you even move, you have to constantly reorient. So you've got to get really good at the fluidity, not the fixity, right? There's fixity and there's fluidity. The fluidity is just to say it though. Oh, life is fluid. That's nothing. It's like I want to listen to good music. Play the music. Play the
Play the music.
right? Play the music,
Hey,
or help
Dennis,
me play it better. You know?
we're done. Our
we're
hour
so-
has just gone by so doggone
Oh.
quickly. How do people get a hold of you?
I'm on LinkedIn, Dr. Dennis Rebelo. I'm on Instagram, Ask Dennis. I host a podcast out of Mass MoCA called My Story Vault. Mass MoCA is the largest museum of contemporary art in the United States. Lovely place. And inside my podcast, it's an actual vault and my studio, and it's in a place called Storyworks,
That's cool. That's
which
great.
is like a creative retail space and classroom. Yeah.
Do you have a website?
Yeah, drdennisrebelo.com. There's a contact page there. People
Is it
can
one
reach me.
L in Rebelo? R-E-B-A?
One L.
Yeah.
From the mainland of Portugal, Joel. We're from the mainland.
Rebelo.
Rebelo. We're starting. It's a good bookend. We're gonna play the Portuguese R. Thank you so
Amen.
much for the time and your interest in my work. I really appreciate the friendship and the colleagueship over the years.
Oh, I
Really
love
wonderful.
it. I enjoy talking with you. I get exercised, stimulated intellectually, and just thank you so much for your kindness to come on the show today.
You bet. Always a thrill. Always a thrill
Thank you.
to talk to you. Yeah, always a thrill.
You have just experienced another episode of the Mischief Maker broadcast. Hit the subscribe button. Connect at chiefmischiefmaker.com. Thanks for coming along for the ride. And hopefully, you are now a bit closer to becoming a mischief maker in your part of the world.